Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma J. A Spiritual Divine. I'm going to give you a show news and a word on tonight. So, Hamas respond to the ceasefire proposal by accusing Israel of starting. Now, Hamas said Tuesday there could be no exchange, of prisoner before permanent ceasefire. And a full Israel withdrawal from Gaza as it responds to the proposal from Egypt and Malta. So Hezbollah on Tuesday also accused Israel of starting on reaching an agreement and warned by never got, would not be open to Israel continue. Now they're saying they had an agreement. They said they had an agreement. So eventually it didn't follow through. And they said it won't be no exchange, until they have a permanent ceasefire. So we see there will be no exchange of prisoner before a permanent ceasefire. But we're going to keep on praying that they'll be safe and they will all be released safe. So I have no underdog to this giant. That's David. It's going to come from 1 Samuel 17:32 to 51. So we see that David was no underdog for this giant. So David was a boy, when God anointed him. Now he was working in a field killing lions and bears. Now if he can kill lions and bears, what he will do with this giant? So that giant wasn't nothing to him. He just went out there with confidence in God that he can tell this and he said when I knock you out, I'm gonna take your head. And so God delight in calling those who are small and weak. And see, God get his glory from the small and from the weak. The ones who think they can't not do it. But God will grant his people strength, and power and equip them to accomplish, amazing things for his plan. So I was just talking about that this morning. God will give you strength. It doesn't matter how difficult the plan is. You feel like you can't go no more. God will give you strength to keep on moving forward. He will equip you. So God empower the weak to conquer the strong, demonstrating throughout the Bible. Now, throughout the Bible. Now look at Moses. God called Moses, and Moses was trying to turn it down. I can't speak well, and he was trying to come up with all kind of excuses. And so God said, I'm gonna bring your brother with you. And so when he called Jeremiah said, I can't speak. I'm just a boy. He gonna call the small. He gonna call the small and the weak, who think they cannot do it. But God will equip them to do it. And see, God gonna get his glory from the small and the weak. Jeremiah was just a boy. And David was just a young boy. He was just a little boy when he anointed. You know. And Joseph was like 16, 17 years old when he put that dream up in Joseph. So he gonna get his glory out the small and the young. He gonna empower them to conquer. So we see that some weak, but God give them big purpose. Look at Moses. Moses had just broke loose from Pharaoh. So he like, you want me to go back over there? He ain't gonna listen to me. So Moses thought it was too big. Thought it was too big. And see, that's the one God gonna get. Who think the purpose is too big? Who is so weak, and don't have confidence. God will get a weak person, the small person, a big purpose. You know, so Moses standing before Pharaoh because he had fear, you know, he didn't speak well. And so then Elijah was standing against the prophet, of Balaam. And Balaam had fighting the Ammonites, so it had, but then they turned out to be good prophets, you know. That's what when God has said there will be no more like Moses. He's saying Moses, even though Joshua had went after him, there was none like Moses. Because see, God designed and built people for different purpose. No matter how good you say you is, God had designed Moses for that. You notice he didn't put Aaron in charge. Aaron was just a spoken. You know, Moses took charge. He the only one had communication with God when they got mad. How come he the only one talk? Because God designed Moses to do that. And so David fight against this giant. When he just was just a little boy. Even the giant said, "You just a boy. What you come out here, come out here with these grown people, big old people, and you come out here just being a boy with sticks, and them sticks, will wear him down. You know, all display the power of God working through weak human beings. God worked through me too. Got a big purpose on your life. He working through me too. He's trying to equip me, to deal what I have to deal with. And that's the same thing he did with Moses. He demonstrated with Moses first before he had went to Pharaoh. He said, yes, that stick you got up in your hand, drop it on the floor. Turn it into a snake. So he was showing them. He was showing them that you got power. You got power. Wherever I tell you, you got power to turn that stick into something. And God was showing me. She said, God gonna equip you with your power. He gonna equip you with what you need. Because Moses was scared. He was a slave under Pharaoh, and you mean tell me how he had to go back. He beat one of his people up, and he land up in that field and met his wife and his father-in-law. And so we see that David was criticized, but that didn't stop him. He had confidence in God that he can take that giant down. And see, when you got confidence, and confidence in God, you can do anything. Yes, you can. You know, it's just like me. They say, fall down so many times, and you just keep on getting up. I got confidence. Got confidence in God. That whatever I fall, I can get back up. So God couldn't chose Saul. Now he was tall, but God chose a boy to take a big giant. Because Saul was there. David had told Saul, I could take him. I was in the field. I was killing lions and bears. God could have let Saul do it. Saul was tall. The giant was tall. But God wanted David to do it. He was just a little boy. God would use the small and the weak, and equip them to do it. And they turned out to be a good prophet. Turned out to do good. Moses thought he wasn't going to be able to do that big job. He had about 2 million people, and he did a good job. So God will always, chose weak. But we have to see that David was fearless. He was fearless. For to go out there and be against that big old giant, he didn't want to dress, with all them things on. He wanted to dress with the armor of God on. That's all you need. That's what I was talking about this morning. Dress with the armor of God on. So when the giant is trying to intimidate you, to keep moving forward, because the devil will try to give you distraction. They was criticizing first, you're just a boy, how you going to do that? And David had to tell him, I kill lions and bears. I cracked their neck with my bare hands. And he just a little boy. Now, if he could do that, if he got confidence to go out there in front of that giant, you know, and so Saul had told him, go ahead, let the Lord be with you. He took all that stuff off, and that's all he needed with his thanks out in the name of the Lord. You know. And so the giant had said, you come out here with sticks, but pick out the stone of faith. So when you fight in the power of God through Jesus Christ, so he fighting, the crash will be defined when the giant fall down. Because the bigger you are, the harder you fall. And so that's what he's saying. The crash will be defined when the giant fall down. Who said giant cannot fall down? The harder the bigger they are, the harder they fall. So 1 Samuel 17:45, David said to the Philistine, you come against me, with a sword and a spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord, the Almighty, the God of the army of Israel, whom you have defied. Because he said that giant have not been circumcised. So he called him defiant. And he talking about, David come out there, with this dad, being a little boy. But David said, if I'm a little boy, why you come out here with a sword and all this clothes and armor you got on? If I'm just a little boy, And so David was no underdog, against this giant. He wasn't scared to talk to this giant. He wasn't scared to fight against this giant. He had confidence, and his confidence was in God. God couldn't pick anyone because the Israelite was afraid. He couldn't pick none of the Israelites. All of them was afraid. They were scared to even go there because of that big old giant. So of this giant. Now Saul was tall, but God knew that David, since a child, and God know what he can do. And see, God was in that field, so that's why when that package was about when David, was become the king, finally had become the king, and so God had told him, you're gonna be great, you're gonna be great because I watch you, whatever way you go, when you was in that field, I was with you. So God knew what David can do, because God was with him when he was in that field. That's why God knew he was there when they had went over there to bless him, anoint him. They had all them his brothers come out there. So God said, that's not there. That's not there. You got one more. And he probably was in that field, and he was in the field. Wherever where David went, since he was a child, God was with him. Because God knew eventually he was going to use him. So he watched and protect David. So this young boy took this giant, and he fell down to the ground, and we also can see that God used others weak. Now he was a young boy, just like Samuel. Samuel was a little boy when God called him 3 times. He ain't know nothing about God. He running to Eli. Somebody calling me. He said, go lay down. And see, Eli didn't realize it was God calling him until the second call. So God Eli had told him, if he called again, yes, Lord. And he was a little boy. And God called him and give him instruction on what was about to happen. So he talked to the young, and he talked to the weak, and he got the job done because that giant fell down. What goes up, what's come down, So against Pharaoh, Moses, who was weak, wanted to walk away because he didn't speak well, but he took in and led 2 million people to their promised land, you know. And so Moses kept on trying to turn it down, kept on trying to turn it down because he like, you want me to speak to Pharaoh. He ain't gonna listen to me. I don't speak well. He was making all kind of excuses. And so God say, okay, I'm gonna bring your brother. His brother gonna speak for you. He that's how Aaron's dog came along. And he also got a position. He was a priest. So Elijah, who was weak when pressure came to him, pressure came to him, he ran. But God encouraged him. God encouraged him to go back and complete. God wasn't ready for him. God said, you're going to go back. I have another job for you to do, and in the meantime, I'm going to send you some help, And so God encouraged him to go back and complete his mission all week, all week. But God equipped them to get the job done. You know, he equipped him. Moses, he had that stick. He used that stick for everything. He said, open that Red Sea up. Okay, close that Red Sea up. You know, he dropped the stick. So he was equipping to let him know he got power. And then Elijah, Elijah was a good prophet. Nobody don't like the prophet to tell them nothing. And so they wanted to kill him every time you look around. And so he thought it was gonna be his last job. He ran. He told God to take him out. God looked at him like he was crazy. God said, what you talking about? You can, and God saw him on another mission right next to his enemy. Because when God saw him on a mission, God was gonna watch over him. So he went back. Where the people wanted to kill him at was the next door neighbor. So all the week, but God equipped them to get the job done. We all can be no underdog to our giant. You have to walk boldly. You have to walk fearless. You got to stand up to them. We have to stand up to our giants. And be underdog. Be fearless. And have confidence in God. And you can also bring down a giant. Anytime a little teenager brought that giant down, we can do the same thing. Have confidence to stand up and embrace our giants. So I also have one, shakable confidence. Now we just talk about David. So let's talk about his shakable confidence. He had and so walk in boldness and confidence. So David had an unshakable, confidence. When he was a young boy, he had to fight this giant. As a Philistine, he moved closer to attack David. David quickly towards the battle line to meet him. But he was a boy, he was able to move quickly, like he was playing football or something. And he would move quick. And so reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, he stung him, right in the forehead, and it stuck on his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. you know. So when David had trampled over the Philistine with a slingshot, without a sword in his hand, and struck down the Philistine. And now he talking about, remember that giant go talking about, you coming out here with that? I'm just going to tear you to pieces. Now look who fell down. That giant fell down. David had shakable confidence. Shakable confidence. And when David had ran and stood over him, he took the whole of the Philistine sword and threw his sleeve and killed him, and he cut off his neck. And so that's what he said. That's what he said to that giant, what he was going to do. So David had an unshakable confidence in God. David knew he could not beat that giant, but with his own strength. He know he couldn't beat it with his own strength. That just like we can't make it with our own strength. We have to have God in our life to fight these battles. So beat this giant with his own strength. We knew we couldn't. God could interfere anytime. So by he had confidence in God. He knew anytime that giant was about to tear him to pieces, he knew God was going to interfere. He knew God was going to interfere and save him. So he went out there with confidence, knowing that God was right there by his side. So the giant said, "You come out here with no weapon." David had said all he need is a slingshot in the name of the Lord. He beat the giant and fell down, and David walked out there and faced this giant with boldness and confidence. And that's how we have to do. We have to be confident, and we have to be fearless, because when you got God in your life, and fighting your battle, we we don't have to be, fear. We don't have to be in fear. You have to be boldless and fearless. Because see, that's how David was. David had unshakable confidence. He went out there and faced that giant knowing that God would be with me. And so when he know the giant would have got any closer to tear him up, he knew God was gonna interfere at any time. So the giant said, "Come out here with no weapon." So he beat down the giant and fell down. David walked out there with face in this giant. He went out there and faced this giant. So in my storm, I walk boldness and with unshakable confidence. No matter what I have to face, I have confidence. We got to have confidence and we have to have faith. When you got confidence in God and faith, you know, you can walk boldly and you can face your giant. So that's all I have for you today. You be an underdog and you have to have unshakable confidence. When you have unshakable confidence, and when you go and fight something real big, or you got to entangle a big project or something like that, you have to have unshakable confidence, knowing you got to go out there, knowing that God fighting my battle, knowing that God gonna interfere at any time. And that's what David was. David knew he could not beat that giant. David had confidence in God that allowed him to go out there and face his giant. So we also had talked about Hezron. There will be no exchange for prisoner. Before a permanent ceasefire. You know, and also they accused Israel of starting on a reading of an agreement. You know, so um, they're saying he had an agreement that it was agreement. And so they is still working on that. So there will be no exchange on the prisoner at this time. So that's all I have for you today. Y'all have a nice night and be safe and have a nice see you on the next video.